Hello, this is Adam of American Teacher on YouTube. If you haven't, please click subscribe and give me a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section below. Today I thought I would move away from the news for a while and talk about my political beliefs. And I guess it's hard to really categorize me. A lot of people would call me a liberal, but in some ways I'm conservative. My main political belief is that there should be no extremes. And when I'm talking about extremes, I'm talking about extreme capitalism or extreme socialism. And to clarify a little bit more, when the Founding Fathers founded the United States, they didn't envision a two-party only system. They didn't envision that corporations would be the largest donors to political candidates. They couldn't foresee that happening. And basically that's what's happened over the years. So the U.S. has a democratic system and also a capitalist system. Capitalism is more of an economic system, and democracy is more of a political system, but they overlap. So over the years, what's happened is, in the U.S., is that the interests and beliefs of the common people of America have in general been set aside in favor of the interests of the extremely wealthy and the corporations. I know you've seen on the news, many corporations like Amazon pay almost 0% of their earnings in taxes each year. And this is an example of extreme capitalism. So how did we get to that point in the U.S.? I think the way we got to that point in the U.S. is that we have a revolving door between lobbyists and politicians, and what are called consultants and politicians. So also we have a very loose political donation system where most political donations are untraceable, and so we don't know which corporations or which entities are behind the largest donations to our political candidates. It's gotten to the point where to run for president costs about $1 billion or more US dollars for each presidential election, for each candidate. And that is a huge problem. And that is something I'm sure if the Founding Fathers knew about that, they would not be happy. So, so what happens is these corporations donate to political action committees, or PACs. And the biggest ones are called super PACs, or super PACs. And these, you better believe these political action groups keep track of who donates the money, but they're not required to share that information with anybody. So, so the super PACs relay this information onto the political candidate, and the political candidate knows whose interests he or she needs to look out for if and when they are elected. Also, politicians like senators and even representatives, when they finish their terms in office, many times they're hired as either lobbyists or consultants by these major corporations that donated to their political campaigns. And so their insider knowledge and connections in the government are leveraged by the corporations. So I hate to say that the U.S. has become an oligarchy, but we're almost to that point. But this is not real democracy. Real democracy is a political system in which each person has a voice. And each person is able to influence, even if it's only in a small way, the outcome of the elections in the country, the direction of the country. And I hate to say it, but I think that power of the people has been diluted, and it's been diluted by corporate interests and the super wealthy in the U.S. That said, we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater and adopt a completely new system. We don't need to go to extremes. Extremism never works out. It's never good. Also, authoritarianism has never worked out in the long term in history. So what do I think we should do? Well, this is where I would say that we do need more regulation and more power put back into the hands of the people. And how should we do that? We should insist on ending political action committees completely. We should insist on a fair taxation system in which corporations that make hundreds of billions of dollars every year have to pay a fair share of taxes. We need to prohibit politicians from becoming lobbyists. In fact, I would be fine with doing away with lobbying altogether. I think it's more harmful than helpful. And I do think, and this is the dirty word among a lot of people in the United States, but I do believe we need some measure of socialism. I'm not talking about Cuba. I'm not talking about China. I'm talking about taking care of basic necessities, but at the same time giving people a choice. How will we do that? Well, for one thing, we could we could expand Medicare or set up a national health insurance program like we have in Taiwan. That they didn't do away, they didn't outlaw private insurance. We still have private insurance in Taiwan, and the private insurance companies still survive in Taiwan, private medical insurance companies. The thing about it is, if you pay for the private medical insurance, it covers things like a private hospital room if you're hospitalized. Also, it's an investment. Medical insurance in Taiwan is an investment, a long-term investment that gains interest, and you can use it as like a retirement investment. So the healthcare system in America is immensely unjust. I spent most of my life in the U.S. without medical insurance. A lot of the time, my dad was working self-employed or working part-time or working in a job that did not provide health insurance. And when I went to university, I couldn't afford to pay for my own insurance. I tried to one time. I looked up how much it would cost. This is back in the mid-1990s. It would have cost me about $250 US per month, and that's with a high deductible. And at the time, in the mid-90s, I did not have the money to purchase medical insurance. And once I had kidney stones when I was in university, and I had to go to the emergency room. And the emergency room visit cost me almost $1,000 back in the 90s. And I had to pay it off over time. But luckily, it wasn't anything that required surgery, or the cost quickly could have ballooned to the point to where I might still be paying for the hospital treatment in the U.S. In contrast, when I go to the hospital in Taiwan, I generally pay about $5 US to see the doctor, and that includes medicine. The doctors are very competent, and at the hospitals, most of the doctors speak fluent English, so I don't need to know another language to communicate with them. I remember one time I had a CT scan when I had a scooter wreck. It was about $5 or $6 US. So any of you in America who've had a CT scan before, you know that's definitely not the case in the US. I know a lot of people in the US are thinking that's unsustainable. Our government is too incompetent to ever set up a program like that would work. You know, they've done it here, and they've done it in other countries too, many other countries. In fact, the US is one of the very few developed countries that still does not have a national health insurance program. So I'm not really buying that excuse. Another thing is, people think, well, if you have a safety net for people, if you set up a stronger, better welfare system, then it will encourage people to be lazy. Let me tell you, Americans work harder than almost any other developed country in the world, if not the hardest. Almost every other country has more paid holidays than the US. And these countries seem to be doing very well. Psychological studies have shown that holidays are essential to maintaining employee satisfaction and also productivity and the psychological well-being of the employees. People wonder why we have mass shootings in the US. I'm not saying mass shootings are caused because people don't have many vacations. But what I'm saying is, all these things put together can put a lot of stress on an individual, like not having access to affordable health insurance, not having access to paid holidays. These things can add to the stress level on someone, and they can exacerbate already present psychological problems. Another thing is that I think I'm not just picking on the U.S. here. I'm talking about the U.S. because that's what I know. That's where I'm from, and I really consider myself a patriot. I really want to see America succeed. I don't want to change the U.S. flag. I don't want to do away with democracy, definitely, because I believe democracy is the best form of government that has ever been created thus far. I believe you should have the freedom of speech. As long as you don't slander someone, or as long as you don't psychologically torture someone with your speech. So I believe definitely in free speech, to the point to where I would never outlaw burning the U.S. flag. And I know that's a very controversial topic, but you know what countries outlaw the burning of the flag and the criticism of the government? Those are countries like North Korea and China. And America definitely does not want to become like those countries. You can't force people's loyalty. You can only earn it. And by looking out for the people, which is what democracy was created for, by serving the interests of the people, then you will gain their trust. When people see Jeff Bezos flying into space and not paying taxes, his company not paying taxes every year, and they are worried about mortgaging the house in order to pay for their surgery, do you think they think the government has their best interests at heart? Of course not. So what I believe is there has to be some regulation. I mean, you look back at the early days of the United States, and you have case after case. Probably one of the most egregious was John D. Rockefeller and Standard Oil Company. Is one of the first things they teach you in history, American history or American economics, and that is Standard Oil. What John D. Rockefeller did is that he would go into a town and set up one gas station, and he would artificially lower the price of gas to the point that the other gas stations in town would go out of business. Then he would buy out the other gas stations, and he would raise the price of gasoline and make money hand over fist. Of course, this is unethical, and now it's also illegal. It's what is classic monopoly. And we do have companies in America that are on the verge of becoming monopolies. Amazon's one, Google, or Alphabet. And I do think there needs to be more government regulation in these areas. This is not erosion of freedom. This is actually providing more choice. It's about providing more choice, more affordable choice for the people of America. And I'm not talking about having state-run companies, except for maybe the most essential things like national health care insurance. I'm not talking about the government taking over, cable TV or internet. But I am talking about more regulation in order to make competition fairer. Because if you have extreme capitalism, competition disappears. How many startup companies today could compete against Amazon in online shopping? I would wager to guess 0. So we really do need some regulation in a democracy in order to protect the people's interests. And that's what a democracy is all about. So if you haven't already guessed from my earlier comments, I am completely against communism, and I'm completely against authoritarianism. I believe if you put that much power into the hands of one person or one small group, like the Communist Party, that they inevitably become corrupt, even if they start out with good intentions. We're all human, and to put that much control in the hands of people who don't answer to the citizens of their country is a recipe for disaster. So I believe we need to fix the U.S. government to where it's more accountable to the people. We can do that by overhauling campaign finance completely, making that a prerequisite of electing someone to office, their support for campaign finance reform and reduction or the ending of lobbying and the end of political consultants working for companies, major corporations and other companies. So those are a few steps that we could take to put more power back in the hands of the people. But we definitely don't want to go the route of communist and authoritarian countries, because that would erode the citizens' power even further. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. Thank you for watching American Teacher. Bye-bye.